Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Friday's edition of REUZEL Facebook Live. My name is Curtis Lawrence. I am Education Coordinator for REUZEL Pomade. Today we have Mr. Jason Irwin, directly from Rotterdam at Score himself. Jason, how you doing today, buddy?
Hi, I'm Rob, owner of Scorum House Snyder on Barber. You might know me as the Bloody Butcher on Instagram, where I have 178,000 people that love me. We're going to be starting today with a chapter. Let me show you that. This is the fridge. This is where we keep our delicious alcohol-free items. These are new stations we've just put in. You might have seen us building them. This is Mikey's chair. We got Lawrence here as well. This is our denim display. And then, if you look at the back that's the outhouse. Interested in merch. Maybe a book about myself. We have this one. We also have this book of photos of me. You might like those. This is actually the station from the original shop. We're still across the street. We've got Randy here, Yona here, Rufus here. This is the safe. Keep my millions of euros. This is the other station in the shop. You might recognize this chair from all of our old school haircut photos. This chair is actually from 1873. It's our oldest chair. It's quite cool because you can see the hydraulic system is brand new. Well, at the time it was released. Hot towel. This is the station over here. I like to leave everything a mess to make sure that people know I was here. I own all of this stuff. We're going to start our 3-hour demo now. Today we're going to be taking the mannequin from this to this. I'm a big fan of David Bowie, so we're going to be doing a bit of, it's the Aladdin Sing cover. He has this haircut. You might recognize it better with the lightning bolt on the face. But I'm going to be showing you how to go from this. This is basically just all one length into, it's basically a very short pump with a mullet through the back. What I think is really special about this haircut, and what we're going to be looking at today, is the whole haircut we're going to do with scissors. We're going to do a really tight graduation through the back, and it's going to really round around the shape of the head here with actually a bit more length in the center. And then the mullet is going to stay square. So if the person had shoulders, it would be cut along the shoulders. So it's going to be connected in here, disconnect through here, and then just length on the top, traditional. Basically from the front, it looks like a short pump. From the back, it's got like that very androgynous vibe from David Bowie in the, with the Aladdin Sane era, the Ziggy Stardust era. Back down. Who are we starting in the back here? Sorry, we've got a little bit of a gas leak. You can hear that. They're doing a little construction next door. 178,000 people that love me. I own all of this stuff. So we're going to be, well, I guess the first section I'm taking here is, well, it's sometimes the numbers are
fucking stealing my identity. There's only one fucking butcher now.
Go! Okay, we're back. So we're going to be starting with our first section. Now you might think, traditionally, a lot of what you've seen in the past few weeks is you take a section from that front temple around this widest point of the head into the back, separating this cool hair, this boring hair, from the cool hair on top. But we're actually going to be taking a little bit different section. We're going to be taking a section from the apex, the highest point of the head, to the widest point of the head behind the ears. This is going to separate all the hair that we can cut round from the hair that we can cut square. Call this away. I like to, when I'm working with really long hair, the way I think about the baseline is where the hair transitions. So in something like a razor faded pompadour, where it's very short on the sides and it's very long on top, that transition happens at the parietal ridge. So I'll set the baseline there. But with a haircut like this, where it's very short around the occipital bone, it's long back into the nape, the length graduates on the side, the real transition area is this point of the haircut. So I want to start with the baseline. So I'm going to take that section over to the other side. And again, this is just tracing those wide points on the head. This is really about, when you're thinking about building a shape in a haircut, what you're really trying to do is connect the most prominent points of the haircut to create a smooth shape, and then you can adjust the lengths in between them. So you want to make sure that they're not going in past the widest point, because then it'll be very hard to control your shape. So that's what we're doing, is we're connecting wide point to wide point with a little bit more water, and then we're going to connect to the wide point at the back here, the occipital bone. So then I'll have total control over the shape, because I can go as short of those areas as I want, and I can still create a smooth round shape. Straight down. Excellent. So I'm actually, like I said, I'm going to be starting my baseline at the occipital bone, and I'm going to be taking a point from here to that wide point behind the ears. Again, I'm going from wide point to wide point, and I'm just connecting. Take that. It's a little bit easier when they have real ears that you can tuck this around. I'm actually going to take a section here, because this is where that disconnected mullet length is going to be. Now, it's really important when you're cutting a line, you want to make sure that you have all that hair, even tension, come right out from the scalp, like that. Actually, take that a little bit shorter. We're going to be transitioning now. You see, now I'm actually bringing the length in a little bit tighter here, is it's not even around the whole length. I want this, actually, try to even the noise. I want this to be very short, pretty much just the knuckles length at this bone on the side here. And then get a little bit lighter through here, just to really make that disconnection into the mullet pop. Section on the other side. Always work to work on both sides at the same time, because for me it's just easier to find balance. So many people like to work one side at a time, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing with that. But for me, it's a little bit easier to find balance when I work both sides at the same time.
So, guys, obviously, that bold little vermin there is not the real butcher, but trust me on this one. This guy does one hell of a mean haircut. So this is going to be an absolute awesome live performance. One of our guys, Mr. Milky the Barber. So, thank you so much for watching. Stay strong, stay healthy. Well, you know what everybody's saying, but I really, really wish for all of you guys to be back behind the chair as soon as possible, because we miss it as much as you do. So, back to the main man here. Enjoy. Jason.
Thank you, Rob, for the
Enjoy.
real introduction.
Have fun. I know
It's
you're
so
gonna
nice. It's so nice to finally be doing a haircut again as well.
fully understand, man.
It is so
I
nice.
can't wait to see you, because you know I'm a huge David Bowie fan.
Yeah.
Enjoy, my friend.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob, and thank you for being a good sport.
I thought it was really, really sexy that Ayala tied me up. You know, I've been fantasizing about this for a long, long time. You know, and he did it just right, a little tight, and the way you were watching. You know what? I'm gonna go.
So that first section is really important, because that really defines what you're going to do with the mullet and then what you're going to do in the back. So that is definitely the one where you want to take a little bit of extra time, make sure all that's right, and then you can work around the rest. That's also where the length is going to be the shortest. So you really have to make sure that you've gotten exactly the way you want it to do. So it's really important now as you work up is, all of those same rules about clean lines apply, but you want to make sure that you're not directing down too much, because that'll create a lot of weight, and then the angle of the haircut will build out. When in this case, because it's going to be so short, we actually want the length to build around the crown. So when you're cutting a square haircut, it's important that at the wide point of the head it's square, but the rest of the haircut you can tailor to the shape of the skull and leave a bit round. If you look up at the flat top on the poster there, you can see that while it's a flat top, it's very square, it's completely round behind the ears. And that shape allows you to control the length in the crown because you can make the crown heavier or lighter depending on the growth pattern of the patron. So in this case, the growth pattern is, it's a mannequin, so it's a bit of a spiral shape, it's not overly strong. So I can go quite short. If someone has maybe a low crown or a really powerful crown, you can leave a little bit more length. The more you direct it down, the heavier everything gets. The more you direct it up, the lighter everything gets. Take that section up. Just look for your guide. Follow it around. Find your short hairs. This is, besides that mannequin over there that I pre-cut to figure out exactly how I wanted to do this. This is the first mannequin I've cut since I was 18. All the barbering I ever did, I've never done on a mannequin before. So this is the first men's haircut I've given a mannequin. I learned to cut, like many of you guys did, I'm sure, just kind of on your friends in your kitchen with a pair of sheep clippers from the store. Before I was a barber, I started in hairdressing. I did that for a few years, but I was terrible at it. I was working in a women's salon, and it was mostly hair color. It was a lot of reds and a lot of highlights, a lot of retouches. But the problem with it is I actually can barely see color. So the more and more I did hair color, the more I realized that not everyone actually wanted the color beige, and that I was doing something wrong. So it was about that time that I was really like, well, where do I go from here? But I saw the first video of the shop. And I remember seeing one of my old coworkers, Lau, actually, he just skated across the screen. I didn't know anything about the haircuts. I didn't know anything about the shop. I'm from the States originally. I thought the place was in New York City. And I went, well, that's it. I'm just going to work there. And it took me about 2 years to get here. And I've actually now been here for about 2 years as well. And it was a great decision. I've been having the best time here. And Curtis, the guy who's actually emceeing this whole thing, is integral in my getting here. He pulled me out of the audience at a show after his model bailed, because I was the only guy in there who had hair long enough that he could hold it between his fingers.
Yes, and you were the only greasy one in the bunch, too.
You were the only greasy bunch. The greasy one in the bunch.
Well, that has not changed at all. I showered just for you guys. So you'll notice that with these sections now, I'm keeping that elevation high. I'm keeping those angles not low, but high. And then the biggest thing you'll notice is my sections are actually not staying in an even herringbone shape. They're pivoting around the back. So they started like this, and now they're rotating up around the back, all pivoting, connecting this wide point to this fin of length through the middle of the haircut. So eventually, when I get to the sides, I'll have that square straight line. It's a lot of sections. It's a lot of this over and over again. But for me, what I really like about working with this section shape and doing a haircut in this manner is I really like that you get to build and control a lot of the structure of the haircut. It's not just like a big chunk of hair comes off and you see what happens. But this, for me, it's a very controlled way of haircutting, and you build a lot of your straight shape, a lot of your structure into the haircut this way. This is actually, I think, something I originally heard from Johnny Barber, a barber and shop owner in the UK. He said he's got this rule, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the actual haircut is your technical work, is these lines. 20% of the haircut is that finishing touch, that barber's eye. But when you get to the final look, what really creates the image for your patron, that technical work you do through this is really only going to be 20% of the look. What you actually end up with is 80% of the look is that barber's eye at the end. But you need this foundation, because this foundation allows you to express the things you're looking for in the haircut, and especially the things your patron is looking for in the Yeah, it's great. There's this phrase from Sassoon I really like, that you should work the technique until it becomes invisible. You should not be able to see what you did in the haircut because it should look so seamless on the head. So now, because we're working up around the head into the crown, I am actually going to leave a little bit more weight. I'm not going to pull the section all the way up, but I am going to leave, so I'm going to start to just kind of leave a little bit of weight just so I make sure I have enough length that everything kind of lays down as I build into that contour in the front. And you'll notice now these sections are almost completely on the side, completely vertical. So you can see now how that, I mean, the hair density on a mannequin is not very good. But especially when you work with this haircut on maybe one of your own patrons or one of your own quarantine buddies, you'll see that you've got a really smooth transition here. And these shapes here will really allow the hair to flow in here because you'll be removing all the different weight patterns that can be created working over, especially on a human head, all skulls are very wrinkly, and this will allow you to control how those wrinkles kind of lay. So you see, I'm still pivoting around this point here, that wide point behind the ear. Mullet hair. Do we have any questions coming in yet? Is anyone, I mean, I'm definitely not moving too quickly, but is anything coming in yet?
None as of yet, Milky, but if anybody would like to post some questions in the comments, I'll be sure to get Milky to answer them.
So remember, you're just looking for your guidelines here. If you're struggling to find a guideline, it means you should go back and cross-check. Like, I'm not seeing exactly where my line is, so I can see that I actually, you can look, I made a little bit of a mistake there in my sectioning, so I know that something has to change in this lower section here. So I can check there, and I can see it right away. I got a little bit maybe distracted while I was talking. This is the kind of stuff that, especially since going into quarantine, all I basically do now is sit on my phone and consume media. So this is the stuff I've been really interested in lately. Is I've been really enjoying, especially when you work with mannequins. You don't want to go short right away. The first haircut you give a guy like this should not be a military flat top. So when I got the mannequins to start playing with, I knew that I was going to try and play around with some longer lengths, try and keep some length. Maybe we do another demo at some point, just so that. Just because they're interesting. It's a lot more than just fading. It's a lot more than just taking the hair away. It's you really have to listen to the hair to kind of to experience the haircut in a different way. When you're going to do a haircut like this, rather than just a haircut, because this haircut is all about length, and it's all about hair texture, and it's all about the styling on the end. While fade is really more about how light interacts with the hair density. It interacts with the color of the hair. It interacts with the skull shape. So when you do a fade, even if the lengths aren't even, if you get an even gradient, you're doing it right. You know that when you do a fade, sometimes you have to go a little bit shorter in the dent in the head so that it looks like an even gradient. But in a case like this, because all the hair is suspended away from the head, this is really all about the technical length. It's about you can cut this hair exactly right in a way, which is, I think, for me is very exciting because it means. For me, I think that's very exciting. So now we're up to that.
Question.
Oh.
How long were you a barber before you started at Sorum?
8 months, 9 months, something like that. I started barbering in July 2017. I was working in a barber shop in Montclair, New Jersey called Comb. The owner is Vito Capriglione, a really nice guy. Really got a great start from him. Really learned a lot, not just about haircutting, but about all the other really important parts of being a barber. Little things like the best way to dress a customer, and this is actually one of the things that I'm always really strict about when we're training guys in the shop, is, we'll say this is the cape, is I never like to put the cape on a customer like this, because the thing you're going to eventually do is this. So I always, when I put a cape on a customer, little things like that, detail, or when you're working around the head of a customer, especially when you're working, when we get back to the shops, it's going to be summer, it's going to be nice and hot out. when you're working and you've been working for 10 hours and cutting hair, and you go to work on a customer and you do this, it doesn't matter what you did in the morning deodorant-wise, this is not going to be very nice. So how to work around a customer so the customer is very comfortable rather than just, it was a lot of the technical hair cutting, but I really think the gift that Vito gave me was a lot of the that kind of experience. So I worked with him for about 8 months, and then I actually ended up moving. I moved here May 12th was my first day in the Netherlands. So actually coming up on 2 years I've been here. And May 18th I was hired. I started as an apprentice. I was on the floor as an apprentice, I think for about 2 or 3 months. It took me a while to figure out my visa status. But once everything was figured out there and I was able to start, it was perfect. I was happy as it could be. So now this is our last section in the pattern that we've done. So this is where that first section we took was. So now we're going to be pretty much done with the back to say, because we're going to do the mullet at the end. So we're going to pull this out. Look for our section. Got the buttons there. Line. Round and round here. I'm actually going to take a little bit more weight out. Like I said, there's not a very powerful crown area here, so I can afford to go a little bit shorter. So I gotta watch Yella's got his only so much space here. I'm gonna stand. This is okay?
No, you're in the way.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm working, if I start a section in between the finger, cutting inside palm to palm, I always finish that same way, just because it changes the length and the weight that's left in the hair when you flip. So you'll get a slightly different cut if you flip the direction your fingers are laying one side to the other. There we go. And this. There we go. Okay. Check for balance. Good. 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 Okay. So now that is pretty much all the work we're going to have to do on the back. At the end, when we cut the mullet, it's going to be I'll show you the trick I have for this just to get a really shaggy layer. It's going to be, well, all of this is very precise work. The mullet is going to be done just through texturizing. Because for me, you can do mullets precise, but I just really think that the more almost DIY technique you use in a mullet, the more it gains like a true kind of mullet clout. Make sure, especially when you're doing a lot of sectioning, that you keep the hair evenly down, all the way to the root. Because if the roots start to dry in your sections, the haircut is just going to kind of come out of balance because you're going to have all those lines drying in. I don't know how many people are tuning in from the US, but we used to have to do these things called skateboard sets, where the rollers would dry in the hair in the sections, and then we would spend hours in school trying to get those little sections out, just rubbing the head with our hands. It was a bit bizarre. Now, I'm going to take our section on the side here. And actually, we're going to take a section. So now this is where the style really comes into play. Is you've got this angle to the hairline here, and this angle to the hairline here. And if you...
Can you return the head towards here? Because I'm looking at the door.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So we have two angles here. We have an angle of the hairline here and here. And basically where these intersect is where the style begins. This is where the hairstyle is going to be. So if you trace this up here, this is going to go to the highest point of the head. There. And then, like I said, I always do things on both sides. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side now. And this is going to be the highest point of the head here. And here. So this is where that actual haircut style is going to come into play. So this is the hair we're going to save for later. This is, if you like clips, you can use clips. Fortunately, my patron doesn't really care if there's a little bit of hair in the face. So now you can see that we've got pretty much as much length to do whatever we want with here. This is, again, something where you really want to think about the texture of the hair, the actual way the hair is laying. I'm actually going to start with going through the top a little bit, because I know that this short length through here is really going to define how the rest of these angles lay. So I'm going to take my, my section here. So that's where the line is, and then this is just going to bring me into the back. And I can just take, actually I'm going to stand here for it, so you guys can see a little better. There's the line as it rounds up. And this is where it rounds into the back. So all of this, because it's below that high point on the head, I can cut as round as I want. Take all this like that. You always want to make sure you follow your sections all the way around, or you get a corner, because the hair will over-direct a little bit towards the back. I'll take the next one up here. I'm not going to over-direct it all the way, because again, this length can still be a bit round through here. I'm just going to follow this length all the way up. See, that's the corner if I don't follow it around. I want to make sure I take that off. Same through here. And you see, this is how I'm connecting those sides into the back. Just connecting those sides into the back now. Now I have this line here. I want to make sure now that I'm going, as I'm transitioning now into the sides, I know that I want the hair to lay towards the back here. So these diagonal back sections are going to make sure that the hair is just transitioning really smoothly into the back of the head. No matter how fine a section you take, if you take a section that is 3 hairs wide, the hair on the outside will be pulled into the middle and it will have a slight concave to it. That shorter hair in the middle will always exist. So when you take your sections in the direction you want the hair to lay, it will, all those short hairs will line up and it will help push the hair in the direction you're moving. So that's why I always like to make sure you can see that this section here is directing all that hair back in the way you see it's just the way I want it to lay. Forward here. You can see my guideline there. And I'm just connecting it to that guideline in the back. Really, this kind of hair cutting, for me, it's just connecting the dots. It's 1 to 2, 2 to 3. You always have a point A and a point B, and you're just cutting a straight line as the crow flies between them. Directing that section. There we go. Directing this now to that short point behind the ear. Taking that in. You see these sections are now, because I'm connecting into that white point behind the ear, these sections are actually starting to pivot a little bit as well as we work down to that white point behind the ear, to this one being almost completely parallel with it. This will build a lot of weight in that front fender too, so you can get that really slick look, even though we've tapered in the back so nice and short. This is actually the same way, if you look at Duncan Bailey's haircut, Devon Hair from our school. This is the same thing I do for his haircut, because you can graduate a lot of this length in here. Yeah, and this is too heavy on the mannequin. They've got wild sideburns. So I'm actually going to take a little bit more off in here. I'm going to do that by bringing this hair down. I'm going to start just over directing it down a little bit. This is again where your personal taste wants to come in, the realistic kind of expectations of the customer. Is I want this to actually taper in quite a bit more. See all that. Yeah. There we go. Let's see how that's going. So all this I really like. I think the sideburn I'm going to detail, but I'm going to detail the sideburn. I'm going to detail the sideburn once the hair is dry. Because that hair is going to shrink a lot, and I want to make sure I have enough to leave it a bit scruffy around the ears, but not so much that it's got this real mutton chop look. So there's a lot of extra hair in there. Yeah. I'm going to do that once it's dried up. Okay, so we're going to follow the same sectioning, just down the other side. Just making sure that we check to make sure everything's even pretty regularly. Actually, hold on. You can still see the line there. Okay. Now again, just following this around. Do we have any more questions on this? I've done the first side now, so this is going to be pretty much the same thing. It's going to be symmetrical. So if you guys have any new questions, either about the haircut, a little bit maybe about myself or the shop, or maybe a little gossip about the shop, anything like that, I'm happy to answer them. Nothing. I know we got quite a big response when we started posting about this. I was super excited to see how many people were really excited to show up for this. I know I got, I don't know where everyone's tuning in from, but I know I was talking to a lot of people, Russia, this Colombian ambassador from the other day was posting about it. I really hope everyone's tuned in. It's nice to have that kind of sense of community. So I'll talk, I guess, a little bit about the products that I'm going to use to be styling this. I've got a few, we've got one that I'm going to use a pre-styler, the fiber gel. I really like the fiber gel because the fiber gel is very dry. So the grooming tonic is a natural look, but natural look means it has a bit of shine. And the grooming tonic is based on a very old school kind of tonic, so it's a little bit greasy still. What I really like about the fiber gel is it's truly a dry finish. So fiber gel you can put into the hair, and if you put a lot in, it's going to be a gel. It's going to behave like a gel. If you put just a little bit in and you dry it, you get a very kind of natural, brushed look to the hair. And I think that, especially since we're doing, this era for David Bowie, that's kind of exactly the look he was going for, because most of what he used in his hair was spray. So I'm going to be using that to start. I'm going to just give the sides a bit to slick back, just because they're going to need it. I know that I can see already the growth pattern for the mannequin's head. It really pushes that front hairline forward, as well as it's nice to have a finishing product, because I'm only going to put a little of the fiber gel in so I can keep working through the hair. So there's going to need to be something in the hair to, not in this gentleman's case, he's not going to move around at all. But in a regular guy, he's going to move around and shake his head and stuff. So something to kind of just let the hair set into place a little bit more would be, important. Now you see we're just working around. It's the exact same thing as the other side. This cut is completely symmetrical. So you're just seeing round two here. I'll be connecting these sections in, pivoting around, connecting into the back. This is where we're really building in that kind of squareness to the cut. Because it's going to be very square visually, even though the actual internal cutting is not really almost square at all. And I think that's kind of cool, is how you can play with a haircut, how a haircut looks, without there's a lot of little tricks, and you'll see it when I cut the front, to create almost a super square haircut, a haircut that isn't just like a flat top. We say all of our men's haircuts are based on the flat top, but a way you can kind of enhance those angles in especially a long trim, which is so easy. The hair gets so heavy that it kind of just not on my head, but on other people's head, it just kind of slicks in here. What's nice with these techniques is that because you leave a little bit of extra weight in the corners, you create this super squareness. What you end up with is a haircut that looks naturally a lot more visibly square on someone's head. And the way you achieve that is you can see that my sectioning here is not perfectly vertical. When I pull a hair out, it's not going to be laying directly square on the head. can see maybe already. I might change the length on the side, so we're going to adjust this. But you can see that it actually, my fingers kind of go out a little bit here. So the fingers are going out, and then when I get to this point in the top here, it's actually going to be cut like, my comb is too strong. It's going to be cut like this. So it's not going to be this, it's going to be cut like this, because you're going to have this shape and this, and that's going to create so much weight here that no matter how the hair moves around, it's going to be super square looking. It's always important to check for balance as well, especially at this point.
Being a former hairdresser, for someone looking to get into barbering, would you say hairdressing first would be beneficial?
Well, that was the path I took, and I'm doing okay, I think. But that's not the path that everyone takes. What I think is really the best advice I could give you is to make sure that you're not limiting your education to one field or the other. I think that if you're a barber, you're going to be working in a barber shop. You're going to have plenty of super talented barbers around you who can teach you the barbering. So I would recommend then, maybe focusing on hairdressing classes if you want to be a barber, because when you get to the shop, everyone will teach you how to fade. There's going to be, everyone can teach you how to fade. But not everyone can teach you the hairdresser stuff because you're in a barber shop. But if you're, if you're going to be working in a salon, there's not going to be as many people that are as comfortable with the clipper, doing clipper cuts. So then make sure that you're pursuing barber education to couple with your hairdressing, because it would be very natural for you to receive color education, but it won't be as natural for you to receive clipper education, a classic education. Does that answer your question? Does it, Yella? Does that answer your question, Yella?
Do you see the quarantine as an opportunity to encourage clients to keep a longer hairstyle?
I think the day after the quarantine is the opportunity to encourage a client to get a customer longer hairstyle. The reality is a lot of customers are going to be coming in with two things. They're going to be coming in with this haircut, they're going to be coming in with this haircut. So the summer is, for me, I think actually this is a cool haircut to go into. Because I think this summer is going to be reminiscent of a lot of styles that we used to see maybe in the early 80s, the late 70s. Because we're going to have a lot of guys that grew their hair out and went, wow, I really like this. I actually want to keep some length. I like it a little bit scruffy. I like the more easy wear look. You're also going to have a lot of guys, though, that are going to come in and they'll have shaved their head in quarantine and they'll be ready to not have their head shaved anymore. So we're going to be having all of these the suede head looks. It's when the skinheads started to grow their hair back in a little bit. So it developed this suede texture just because it was rough enough to run your hands over. And they always had these super heavy fringe, basically the exterior of the cut, because it was, technically a 90-degree cut because it was a clipper run over the head. The exterior was just as heavy as the interior, so you get these really blunt, heavy outsides with really interesting middles. And I think that we'll be seeing a lot of both, because I think there'll be a lot of people who want to grow their hair back out after, maybe someone in quarantine just totally screwed it up and took it too high in the back. Or there'll be a lot of people that grew their hair, they didn't want to cheat on their barber, and they decided that they actually really like having a lot of hair on their head. So I hope we get more longer haircuts. I'm clearly having the best time doing this haircut, and if this is the only time I ever do this haircut, I'd be a little disappointed. I can get another mannequin, but it's more fun when the person wears it. Balance is very important when you're working longer haircuts. It's nice when you have a guard 4 on, you can just run a 4 over and it's the same everywhere. And this, you got to work on your eyes. You got to work on everything together. So now we're going to connect that long top. Take a little bit of length off this side because I know I'm taking short of things. So we're going to be connecting now all of this length on top into the length on the sides. We're going to take one little section here running over. And this is exactly, I like to do this the exact, a lot of this is maybe not so familiar, but this is the exact same way that we teach. You start low. Start nice and low. I'm going to take it, you can see it's going to be quite a bit shorter, so I'm not going to take it too low. But I want to make sure I save some length to play with and I cut the top. Take all this off. And this is a very rough connection. This work does not have to be super technical. It's just making sure that, perfect, right there, connects in. That you take a little bit of weight out and that top really does, that front does connect to the sides. There's no weird corner there. So now this, because I know I am going to go pretty short, I'm actually just going to give it a little bit of elevation at the start. this hair in. Around here. Got this hair.
What's your favorite REUZEL product?
I think like my Desert Island REUZEL product would probably be the fiber pomade. I do not think there is a haircut in the world that you can't put the fiber in. There's not a gentleman in the world that his hair type doesn't work with it. If you want curly, messy curls, you can just scrunch a little bit in. If you want a totally natural feel, you can blow dry it in. If you same on the other side. If you want a super greaser look, you can put a bunch in and that shine builds up. If you want something that washes out, it washes out super clean. It stays flexible. I think it smells amazing. I mean, the stuff in the container, I have to resist not eating it. Yeah, I would say it's that one. But the one I use most often on myself, because clearly I'm not using a lot of the fiber pomade, would probably be the astringent foam. I love the astringent foam. I use it actually every single morning. It's perfect. I use it as a skin toner. Just kind of cleans the face a little bit, gets the skin a little bit more relaxed. I think the smell is really pleasant. It's a bit softer smelling than an aftershave as well. So, you know, I can couple it with any aftershave I'm looking for, deodorant or anything like that. But I really love it, especially because I shave my head every other day at tops. I really I like a product that keeps my skin really taken care of. And I think that's something maybe a lot of guys ignore. They don't have maybe some kind of shaving product. They're very used to just, you know, they use hand soap on their face or whatever it is. I'm sure everyone knows someone. So I really think that that is a product that with your customers, you're doing them a great service because you got this guy who's, you know, he's radiant looking, walking around with your haircut like it doesn't get better than that. Last time I was in the States, I discovered that my grandfather uses hand soap to wash his entire body, and it was mortifying to my grandmother. So I was like, maybe some astringent foam will work out. So now I've got the top connected to the sides. I'm going to now be taking, this is just about the end of the section, but this is where you can see where the concave shape is going to come in. So we're going to take just a small mohawk section here, a profile section. Through there. And now we're going to keep this pretty level here because I know that I want to take this length here, but I want the front to be quite short. So I'm going to take all of this off. This is something that you can actually also do in the dry hair. If you're not sure how the hair is going to lay, it's better to do this in the dry hair because you can take a little bit off and then a little bit more off and see exactly how it wants to go. But I know that I'm wasting time by not cutting this because there's no way drying this is going to be faster than cutting it twice.
What's your favorite Bowie quote?
My favorite Bowie quote. I don't know. That's a good question. My favorite album is actually not allowed to say. It's just my favorite haircut. My favorite album is definitely Ziggy Stardust. But my favorite Bowie quote. No, you know, I wouldn't actually even be able to tell you. It'd probably be honestly, I could listen to the song 5 years over and over again. And by the time it was done playing, I would be happy to listen to it again. Yeah, but I'm sorry, I wouldn't even know. Well, I guess I probably shouldn't be doing a David Bowie haircut then. I should have prepared for that one. What are some good David Bowie quotes that I should be looking up? Or was I supposed to give the answer and that person just like it?
Curtis asked.
Was Curtis's question?
No.
Well, we got that. And then, maybe it's from Heroes. Yeah, we could be heroes of just for one day. I like that one. I'm a big fan when it comes to quotes. Pretty much every word that's ever left Kurt Vonnegut's mouth, I really like. But let me show you sorry, we're going to talk about the haircut for a moment. So now this section, build that concave shape. I'm not bringing it out to here to cut it square. I'm bringing it back into that middle section there. So all of this hair can come off. But when I take this hair back out, you're going to see that the angle goes out. So this is really important that you're pulling this hair in. It's already been an hour. Okay. We're going to pull all this hair in here. We're going to be working. Now, you're going to not pull it all the way in, or there's going to be too much concavity, and it's just going to kind of lay funny. We're going to soften it a little bit with our direction in here. There's that. Take all of that in. You can see I can pretty much take all the hair to this point because I want to make sure that everything stays on here. Pull this in. And now to keep that square shape, I'm actually going to take the concave shape out here, so I'm left with that corner. So I'm actually going to flatten this out here, just by directing all of this hair back. And then you can see all of this hair is already connecting into the back here. So now I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side, quickly here. Did we ever get that that David Bowie quote?
Yeah, it was too long.
No.
And these children that you spit on as they try to change the worlds are immune to your consolations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. That's the one.
That stuff is fuck.
Yeah,
David Bowie's
heavy one.
Badass, man. I love David Bowie. Well, look, I'm even more proud to be doing this haircut now. I have a favorite David Bowie quote. All this hair out. There were some really cool interviews with David Bowie when he was still doing, when he was still working in Berlin that I really liked. The guy, man, just such an intelligent guy too, and it really comes across in his music. Because even through the end with David Bowie, for me, like, I mean, Lazarus was an amazing song. That whole Black Star album opening up, especially because he released it right before he died. I mean, that, you can hear him dying on that record, and I think that that's absolutely wild. Cool, so we're just going to quickly connect the mullet here, dry it. And the beautiful part about working technically is you don't have to do a lot of blending at the end, because there's not going to be actually all that much weight in the haircut. So now for the mullet, like I said, I'm basically just going to bulk block the length off. So I'm going to bring everything up to the occipital bone there. Now this is very important. You want to be nice and square, and when you cut this on a person, you should follow their shoulders here. So you're just going to take all of this square. So it's disconnecting now. It is not following your line that's already in there. Square. Square. This is going to give a lot of really short layers. That mullet's going to get gradually more and more disconnected as it gets longer and longer. And that's what's really going to give it a shaggy texture, and that's why these points are going to really pop. This is going to sit very softly. And I think that that kind of juxtaposition just really, for me, super exciting to watch. There we go. All that's nice and square. We're going to clean up the this little bit here. All the outlines I'm going to do once the hair is dried. So this is now we're going to the fiber gel, like I said. Just a little bit. That's more than enough. You're going to think that the hair is actually, for the most part, quite short on the head. This is maybe a lot shorter than you would usually go, but for this haircut, it needs to have that little bit of a fringe slip and fall down on the front. Actually, this is the mannequin hair. I'm actually going to put a little bit more in just because the hair itself, it's low density, but the hairs are pretty wide, so the hair is quite tough. So a little bit more product on that. This was really, it was probably about half as much as you saw on the camera the first time, but I applied the second time. It's a weird one. Okay, so with the drying, you want to dry it very naturally. This is the same, I mean, this is probably the core of the Scorum haircut, is you want it to basically be in its natural fall, because then you can recreate it the next day with product. What's really important too when you think about drying this cut, the one thing with the natural follow is because the sides are very heavy, you can dry them up. And that's going to create a lot of body and that's going to create a lot of swell. So the side can actually dry straight up, and the weight of the hair is going to be enough to let them fall back down. I think it's very important to train yourself to be ambidextrous with the hair dryer as well. You should be comfortable in each hand because then you can truly get a symmetrical blow dry. As one side's not going to be off like this, you're going to truly be able to do exactly the same. Sorry about that. I forget that the camera's on. And it's dry for the most part now. Okay, so you can see all I like to do now at the end, once I see the natural fall, is to just give it a little bit of styling with the brush. Just a little bit of the bend there is going to really help the whole thing kind of pop, that front that falls forward. At this point now that everything's dry, it's just detail. Like I said, a lot of the work, because it was done so technically, you don't really have to worry too much about, perfect, that's going to look perfect. You don't, like a lot of the lines are already in there. They're very tightly cut. So when you go through with your blending shears or you go through with your straight shear, you want to be working on that last centimeter hair. You don't want to be going in too deep, or you're going to take out those really nice lines you already got. I'm going to go through. And essentially now I'm just going to kind of personalize the edges here. Just a lot of deep point cutting there to keep it scruffy, to get all that length off around the ears. And just a bit of slide cutting here. You can see it's good to give it a little bit of texture. This will give it a little bit more movement. And just really naturally let that hair fall into the back. And then this is where when you texturize that mullet, you want to make sure you kind of just get those, clean up the edges, all very freehand, because you really want it to be just how the hair lays. Just a lot of side cutting. Do we have any more questions? Maybe about the blow drying or anything like that? Is everyone pretty much on the same page? still?
Looks great, Maggie.
Oh, cool. Who said that?
Nicholas.
Thank you. I'm just looking to add a little bit of texture and direction to the cut. This is something, if you're more comfortable, you can do with the blending shears. I do it with a straight shear because it just takes a little bit more of the hair away, and I can see exactly what I need to lose, essentially. This texturizing is really where you can take a haircut and put it exactly the way you want it to look. Pull that away.
Scotland says hi.
Hey, Scotland. We're in Scotland. There's
TJ.
Oh, yeah. This one. Little detailing like that. You can see where that disconnection really pops. Mannequin's hair is
Polly!
Hey!
Well done, Yankee. Kiss.
Well, they just.
First version is usually better.
You want to just make sure you keep moving the hair around, looking to see if there is any little bits of leftover weight. Again, I like to do all this with a straight shear, but you can also do it with a blending shear. It's also nice with a mannequin. I can do it a little bit more off to really make sure I get a really shaggy texture in the hair. Something like this, maybe you would even want to do in dry hair or wet hair sometimes, just because it's going to pull the hair a little bit less. It'll be a bit more comfortable for the customer. Once you get the sides of that little bit of texture, it's just a little bit on top. I'm going to go with my blending shears for this, just to get everything even. And then, yeah, well, that's the whole haircut. You can see the haircut stands up without product, but I'll show you what I am going to put in the sides and the top, just to get it into that final look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the hair into the head, keeping the comb in, and I'm just going to kind of just take, not this, but just this hair out from underneath here. And this is really going to iron it almost into the shape of the skull. You see, I'm not taking much out there at all, because I'm not in. I'm over the surface, while those teeth are being dug in. So this really irons the hair into the shape of the skull. But doing this, you need to really make sure you're not taking a lot away, because if you're taking a lot away, something's wrong in the haircut. You're pushing the hair the wrong direction. But what you want to make sure you're doing, but like areas like this where there's that strong growth pattern, you can bring all that up, take away just a little bit of that resistance. Not a lot of hair coming off. And that'll really help the whole style lay in shape. This is where texture really has utility. My biggest question, and I would say the biggest thing to think about, if you want to take one thing away from this, is you always want to be thinking about what does the long hair do and what does the short hair do. Because if you can answer that question, then you never have to worry about a haircut. Because you always are thinking, okay, if I cut this shorter, it'll do this. If I cut this longer, it'll do this. If I put a shorter hair next to a longer hair, the longer hair is going to want to stand up a little bit more. If I put it on top, maybe it wants the hair to lay down a little bit more. So really that question for me is what really dictates and makes haircutting interesting, is it comes down to how do I put short hair next to long hair to create a natural amount of volume, a natural amount of texture in the haircut. I'm going to go through, I'm just going to slice through the top a little bit, back to the straight shear. Thinking about which direction I want the hair to lay. So all the short hair is going to be on this side because I want it to turn this direction. But if I wanted to turn it the other direction, I put the short hair on the other side. And I'm going pretty low in the hair shaft here because I want it to really be able to bend around. And I want it to really have like a real texture to it rather than just to kind of soften those ends so the whole cut blends together. Because for me, like this haircut really has to fall apart in the front. And this, as we get closer to the apex, you can see how strong that wants to go that way. Just kind of push it a little bit the other direction. A little bit of texture, and you can see how much that really opens it up. And then the technique that I always kind of finish with, just to give it a little extra spice to the texture, you can just kind of, again, push the hair the opposite, or yeah, kind of the opposite, kind of the same direction you want it to lay. Just take some away there. I know I want it to lay like that, but because it's going to fall that way and I want it to pop, I can give it a little extra volume just by going like that. So you can see now how naturally that's laying very different than it was laying before. Cool, so let me just throw some product in here. A little bit of length in there. You can always go through and reconnect it technically, but at this point with such a textured look in the front, it really, to me, doesn't serve a huge purpose. A little blow dry just to get all those small hairs out. Matte styling paste. Matte styling paste there. Just a little bit. Just through the sides here to get them laying back nice. The great part about using this, and I think for me, a great way to coach customers, especially when using the product at home, is, Arthur is one of our other barbers in Seattle. One of the great ways is you can make sure the product's evenly spread, because the product disappears when you work it into the hair. Nope, so you want to make sure that when it goes in white, it's very easy to tell when the product's fully dispersed because it looks matte. You can go through, to make sure the product's distributed. And you see, what I really like about that is it slicks the sides back. So as much as this is like, it's the Aladdin Sane haircut, for me this is still a little bit more of a squirm version of it, because you get those big fenders that really slip back. For me, like a very kind of rockabilly Ted style. And then, just going a little bit of texture to the front. I'm not even going to shake the powder in, so I really want to make sure that the powder there, there's the powder. I'm going to work it between my fingers a little bit, just because I really want to make sure that it's breaking it up just where I want it to. I don't want to put too much in, because I want this to be really soft, so you can still kind of run your fingers through it. You can have it kind of come apart in the front. You can get it maybe you would call this more of a Ted shape, maybe you'd call it a little bit more of a loose palm. For me, this is just the coolness of it. It's just that it's a little bit disheveled. It's got a very rock and roll vibe. It's got the texture powder on your hands too is great for the mullet. It's got a little bit of definitely an androgynous vibe with all around texturizing. And I think that for David Bowie, that's really defining of him at that point and throughout most of his career. Cool. Well, we can take one last little scooch around here. And you can see exactly that texture, but still some length in the sideburns and the disconnection here, especially when you don't have such a low density of hair. You can leave this a little bit longer, but the hair is kind of low density. Through here, and so you can really, with your texture powder, you can still rake your hands through it. You can still get a very natural feeling. You can also, if you really want to, slick it super neat to really make that disconnection into the mullet pop. Yeah, well, that's the, spin them around so you can pull this picture. If there are any final questions, I think that's kind of the whole cut.
Mighty fine job there, Mr. Milky.
Yeah, you can see, look at that. It looks better every time you kind of shake his head a little bit. Cool. Do you guys have any final questions? Any to say? No? We're good? Cool. Well, I'm sorry I ran over on time, guys. I took so much extra time. It's because I'm very slow. This is actually the fastest haircut I've done at least a few weeks. But thanks for tuning in, guys. We have our next one on Monday. So we'll see you at 6, well, I guess 6 my time, Monday. Adios.
Guys, we want to thank you. We want to thank you again for tuning in to REUZEL Facebook Live on this Friday afternoon. Coming up on Monday, we have Mr. Dave Hardy. That will be Monday, April 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dave will be tuning in from Pennsylvania. And we also have later on in the week, we have Mr. Patrick Lewis from Chicago and Mr. Hussein Awada. We thank you again for tuning in today, and we greatly appreciate y'all.